What's good, everybody? It's your brother, Mad Black, the most dangerous and most toxic black man on the internet, and I am black up in your face again with some more pro-black commentary. So, everyone by now knows of the brutal beating and murder of Tyre Nichols, okay? And Tyre Nichols was a young man in Memphis, Tennessee, who was murdered by several police officers. And I guess what makes this story somewhat unique is that it was mainly five black police officers, because for those who don't know, Memphis is a majority black city. And they beat that young man so badly, and he died. He wound up dying in the hospital a few days later. It was terrible to see. If anyone's seen the video, you know what I'm talking about. If you've seen some of his photos of Tyre when he was in the hospital, you know what I'm talking about. And I don't begrudge anyone who did not watch the video if they don't feel like they can handle that, or they don't want to traumatize themselves or whatever. That's fine. I don't want to say I'm desensitized to it, but in doing these types of videos as someone who does online content, I feel like I have to watch these things. And also, I think just for my history of being a student of true crime and crime cases, I can look at these things from more of an objective point of view. So it's okay. I watched it for you, and I can understand anyone who didn't want to watch it, or anyone who's seen it and is completely outraged by it. You should be outraged by it because it's horrible, and I feel terrible for the family of Tyre Nichols. I believe he actually had a child as well, if I'm not mistaken. That's even worse. That takes me back to not just George Floyd, but Sean Bell. The fact that your father is taken away from you when you're a baby and you never really get to know your father. That's horrible. Okay. And Akai Gurley is another one. He had a young daughter as well. He was taken away by that yellow devil, Peter Liang. But now you have a situation where this young man was beaten to death by these five black police officers. And this should not be a surprise to anyone. The black community understands this. This is the thing. Like, everyone else, for some reason, is acting shocked by the fact that it was five black police officers killing a young black man. It happens a lot more than you would think. These black officers, they go above and beyond trying to prove that they are one of the part of the police department. They're part of the blue. That's the sad part. You got these black dudes or black people who will join the police squad, and they'll see themselves as blue first. They're part of blue first, and they keep up the blue line of silence and everything else, and stand by their white counterparts. And when they get in trouble, they get cast off and cast to the wind. Now, these white officers, they see themselves as white supremacy first. They don't mix things up when they get into the police department. They know what the line is. It has nothing to do with blue. It's white supremacy. Okay? So, excuse me. So they understand what it means when they get into the police department. Okay? But these black dudes, they get in there and they feel they have to prove themselves. As the classic song by NWA, F the Police, says, in the very first verse, Ice Cube says they'll slam you down to the street tops. Black police showing out for the white cops. Okay? They go above and beyond to prove themselves. And this goes all the way back to slave catching. During the days where they had slave catchers, they had black ones there. Going all the way back before that to slavers in Africa. They had black people helping out with that too. Okay? That's just how it is. There are some deviant and opportunistic minded Negroes out there who see whatever other opportunity. They don't see black. They just see whatever opportunity is in front of them first. And they'll take that. They'll side with white folks against you. for that opportunity. Okay, I'm not saying all. So if you're a black police officer or a black soldier or whatever, I understand. I'm not saying all, but there are a lot of them out there like that. And you know there's some of them out there like that. If you are a black police officer, you've served with some black police officers like that. Okay? So those Negroes, they're getting just what they deserve. I think one of them was a former guard in a prison, and he's been charged before with beating up prisoners and whatnot. So he's no stranger to beating people to death, or at least attempting to. And I hope that they get exactly what they gave out. Okay, I hope these Negroes get convicted, they go to prison, and they get exactly what they gave out to Tyre Nichols when they get there. I want everyone in that prison to know that those Negroes were cops. Okay, because we all know what happens to cops in prison. Being a cop in a maximum security prison is no different than being a child molester. All right, that's how the prisoners see it anyway. So it's a sad story, and I'm kind of glad. I'm glad. I'm more happy or more satisfied, I should say, not happy, but a little bit more satisfied with some of the reactions and the talking I've seen from black people as a whole. Not the ones in the mainstream media, because we all know those Negroes, they're there to get a paycheck, and they gotta say or do whatever their white masters tell them. They're no different than those white cops. They just haven't killed anybody yet. Okay, but they're the propaganda arm for white supremacy. Those black cops, they were the military arm. You got Negroes in the mainstream media and politics that are the political and the mouthpieces for white supremacy. Okay, but as far as black people in general, I think that we've had a decent response to this. I don't believe we should be out there protesting. There's nothing really to protest at this point, but as far as changing things and making sure, because it's not about having black people in a certain position, it's about having the right black people in a certain position. So some people will be happy if they go to a city or a state office and see a bunch of black people working there, but if it's not the right black people, if they don't have the right mentality for that position, they're just another agent of white supremacy, and black people need to understand that. Okay, so don't get too happy when you see. I've had more black police officers. Like, I'll say I've never been harassed by any, but they've been the biggest assholes to me. Like, I would never ask a black police officer for directions. Okay, they just act like complete assholes when they interact with other black people. That's just been my experience. Okay, over the years. Like, I think my wife got pulled over by a black police officer, and he was just a dickhead about a damn signal light. You see what I'm saying? Like, they just go over and beyond. Like I almost feel like they're almost like they want to point the finger at you and say, Negro, you should know better. You should know better not to get in trouble, because you're gonna make me take you to jail. Like that, like stupid stuff like that. So, I don't like dealing with them. I'd rather go ask a different police if I need directions like that. I'd rather ask a different type of police officer. At least they have a little bit more sense in that regard. But some of the black ones, they just act like jerks and assholes. I've never been pulled over by them. I've never been, let's see. Yeah, I'm thinking back on my life. All the officers that I've had bad interactions with as far as being pulled over and harassed has usually been white. And more specifically Italian police officers. So that should give you an idea of how. That's why I usually mention them, just because I grew up in New Jersey. So I know about how a lot of those Italian police officers act towards black people. Another thing that I want to bring up, and I'm going to do a whole separate video on this, is the fact that these police officers were a member of this unit called Scorpion. They're a part of a quote-unquote anti-violence unit. And when you have these types of police units out there, whether it be anti-violence, anti-drug, anti-theft, anti-crime, whatever anti-thing they come up with, it's usually because, the politicians, they want to make it seem like they're tough on crime or tough on drugs or whatever. So they create these special task force, and these task force, they're supposedly supposed to have more power to do whatever they want. And you got some of the worst police officers usually wind up joining these types of task force, and they commit all types of crimes within these task force. Okay, so you gotta be careful with these types of people. I remember growing up, we had the Jump Out Boys. They were an anti-drug unit, and they treated black teenagers like absolute trash. Okay, so I'm going to talk about stuff like that because I found some great audio from people who have studied these types of, task force and anti-crime units and whatnot, and just how devious they are. I mean, it's basically like the unit that you see in Training Day. If anyone remembers Alonzo's unit of scumbag detectives and whatnot, they're supposed to be an anti-drug unit. That's exactly what it's like. Okay, they're setting people up, they're planting drugs, they're murdering people, they're causing gang violence. They'll set up one gang against another. It's the same thing. Okay, so like when that movie came out, I was surprised it came out the way it did. I was like, damn, they got them right there on screen. People were paying attention more to the great acting in that movie, but that's exactly how it is. In fact, that cop that Denzel is playing is based on a real cop. That's based on someone that worked for the Rampart office, if I'm not mistaken, in Los Angeles. Okay, so we gotta be careful of these types of quote unquote elite drug task force and units. Okay, so I'll do a separate video on that because, like I said, I found some great audio to go with that. But once again, I'm very sorry to the family of Tyre Nichols. I'm sorry that young man had to suffer like that. That's horrible. I mean, I can't say being shot is worse or whatever, but being beaten to death, that's animalistic behavior for someone to do that to another human being. Unless if that person didn't assault your child or hurt your wife or try to kill you, I can understand beating someone to death in that regard, someone that threatened your life. But someone that did nothing to you, someone that's pleading for their own life, calling for their mama and stuff like that, you're a horrendous human being to go through with something like that. That's horrible. Okay? The last thing I'll say is, I saw some people making a point to talk about how Tyre was calling for his mother when he was getting beat up. And I'll just say this, don't look down upon him for that. When human beings face death that way, apparently that's just something that comes out of, a person's mouth. If they feel that they're facing death, they call for their mother. One of the things that haunted my grandfather, who was a war veteran who served in Korea and Vietnam, he said one of the things that really bothered him was the fact that you would have grown men at their last moments before they die will be crying for their mother. Okay, so this is not some new phenomenon. It's not. Don't try to mix it up in this whole gender war nonsense or black men being less male or black men having a mama complex. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with human beings. It goes across the board of human beings who, when they face their last moments, that's just something that comes out of them. Okay, and you might not even know that you're going to do that until you get to that point. Okay, and I hope none of you have to experience that to where you feel that type of fear of death, that the first thing you think about is your mother. Okay, so you folks let me know how you feel about this situation in the comments. I very much like to hear it, and I will be back with more on this subject. Anyway, Mad Black, and I will be back with my foot on the devil's back.